Welcome back, everybody. It's 13 after the hour and time for us to go behind the headlines, where the man behind Washington's $30 grams loves Washington, D.C.'s grow and give legalization. M.A.R.K Kleiman, or as I call him, M.A.R.K, is a public policy professor at UCLA. His company, M.A.R.K, was called on to consult with Washington State to help develop its legal marijuana program. The Seattle Post-Intelligencer now calls Washington I-502, quote, the worst recreational marijuana law, end quote, in the United States. Now, M.A.R.K, whose consultation led to absurdly low supply and highest in the nation pot taxes, leading to $30 grams, is hailing the passage of Washington, D.C.'s grow and give recreational marijuana law as, quote, the one I'm most excited about, end quote, and, quote, a big improvement, end quote. M.A.R.K wrote last week in Slate magazine, quote, D.C. law won't allow any commercial activity. District residents will be able to grow a limited number of plants, possess a limited amount of the resulting cannabis, and give away, but not sell, whatever they don't want to smoke themselves. This system is called grow and give, end quote. Well, M.A.R.K is as wrong about D.C.'s grow and give as he was in consulting Washington State's legalization. See, before D.C. passed Initiative 71, it already had grow and give. You could grow marijuana, secretly, of course, and you could give it to other people. But hardly anyone did give it away, in choosing instead to charge $400 an ounce for their gift to one another. Now, post-Initiative 71, people can grow marijuana openly and can choose to give it to other people. But now, neither the grower nor the consumer needs to fret about any law enforcement consequences. So I expect much more giving of $400 ounces to occur. And that, of course, means that law enforcement will still need to do undercover investigations of who's giving away $400 ounces, just like they did before the law passed. M.A.R.K is so happy about D.C. because he begins with the assumption that adults consuming marijuana is bad, okay? He writes, quote, eliminating organized marketing would likely lead to a much smaller increase, if any, in cannabis abuse, end quote. Every piece of advice he gives is distorted by this view, so that he advocates policies he believes will do the most to curtail adult use of marijuana, regardless of whether those policies would undo the biggest harm of marijuana, the prohibition that leads to criminal control of the pot market. Thus, when he consulted Washington State, we got an absurdly low production cap. We can't have too many people growing too much weed or the adults would smoke it. He wrote, quote, states that legalize could at least use production caps or high taxes to prevent the collapse in marijuana prices that will surely result from substituting cheap legal production for expensive illegal production, end quote. And that, my friends, is why we've got ridiculously high pot prices in Washington. Because, you know, if the weed is too cheap, adults will smoke it. He continues, quote, if the goal is to allow adults to toke up in peace, without the hassle of finding a 420-friendly physician and pretending to have some ailment, and to stop arresting so many users and low-level cannabis dealers, disproportionately poor and minorities, it can be done without involving the potrepreneurs now hoping to cash in on the green rush, M.A.R.K predicts. But how does that work, M.A.R.K? Even a UCLA Econ 101 student understands the law of supply and demand. Low-level dealers will still exist, and they'll still be criminals, and they'll still be siphoning away time from law enforcement, and they'll still be siphoning away profits that should be taxed to benefit society, not pocketed to benefit criminals. You'll notice that these types, people like Mark Kleiman, Kevin Sabet, and so forth, can't talk about marijuana use. It's always marijuana abuse. They can't see any use as just use. And they continually refer back to alcohol as their guiding light as to the dangers that would happen under marijuana legalization. M.A.R.K writes many times in many different locations about how alcohol consumption, if everyone consumed alcohol responsibly, the liquor industry would collapse because 20% of the drinkers drive 80% of the consumption. I recently saw some data from the Washington Post that outlined that in extreme detail. It broke down drinking in 10 percentage groups, right? The 10%, the least 10, the next 10, the next 10, and so far, all the way up to the 10% that consume the most. In the first 10 percentiles, the lowest 30% don't drink at all. They're teetotalers, right? And then it went on to the next 4 groups, was like, maybe half a drink a week to a drink a week, maybe a drink a day, something like that. When you got to the end 2 deciles, that 20% of drinkers, one set of them was drinking about 7 drinks a week, about a drink a day. And the other set of them were drinking, and no kidding, 70 drinks a week. 70, an average of 10 a day. So yeah, absolutely. That top 20% is controlling the 80% of the alcohol market. And absolutely, somebody who's consuming 70 drinks a week is going to be presenting healthcare costs and social costs in the form of violence and drunk driving. We're definitely going to see an effect from that. Now, I won't